Imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning, and everyone around you has lost their minds. Not visibly insane, they still go to work, pay their bills, have conversations. But something fundamental has broken. They accept obvious lies as truth. They repeat slogans they can't explain. They attack you for asking simple questions. They've surrendered their ability to think, and worse, they're proud of it. Now stop imagining, because this isn't a thought experiment. This is your reality right now. Look around you. How many people do you know who can no longer engage in rational debate? Who react with rage when presented with facts that contradict their beliefs? Who have outsourced their thinking to authority figures, media talking heads, or viral social media posts? The brutal truth is this. We are living through the greatest mass psychological breakdown in human history, and most people don't even know it's happening. Carl Jung warned us about this nearly a century ago. He wrote that when individuals lose connection to their own inner compass, they become vulnerable to mass suggestion. They stop thinking for themselves and start thinking with the herd. And the herd, Jung observed, is driven not by logic, but by fear, emotion, and the desperate need to belong. Sound familiar? René Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am." But what happens when thinking itself becomes dangerous? What happens when entire populations stop thinking altogether? You get what we have today. Millions of people who exist, but who have forgotten how to truly live as conscious, questioning beings. This is mass formation psychosis. And it's not just affecting other people. It's a psychological plague that has infected families, communities, institutions, and entire nations. The symptoms are everywhere. Blind obedience to authority, hostility toward dissent, the inability to process contradictory information, and the complete abandonment of critical thinking. But here's what's truly terrifying. Those caught in this collective madness don't see themselves as victims. They see themselves as heroes. They believe they're fighting for truth and justice while actively destroying both. This is the cruelest trick of mass psychosis. It convinces its victims that their enslavement is freedom. Friedrich Nietzsche predicted this when he wrote, "Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule." He understood that collective insanity doesn't announce itself with obvious symptoms. It disguises itself as righteousness, progress, and moral superiority. The question isn't whether this is happening. The question is, how did we get here? And more importantly, how do you escape before you become another casualty? If you're watching this, you've already felt it. That gnawing sense that something is fundamentally wrong with the world around you. That creeping realization that you might be one of the few people left who can still see clearly. That terrifying loneliness that comes with being awake in a world that has chosen to sleepwalk off a cliff. You're not crazy. You're not paranoid. You're experiencing what every conscious person experiences when surrounded by unconsciousness. The profound isolation of sanity in an insane world. But here's the thing, you're not alone. In every era of mass delusion, there have been those who refused to surrender their minds. Those who questioned when questioning was forbidden. Those who spoke truth when truth was labeled heresy. You are part of that ancient lineage of free thinkers, and what you're about to discover will not only explain everything you've been witnessing, but give you the tools to break free completely. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer observed that all truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as self-evident. We're currently in stage 2, where speaking obvious truths makes you a target. But stage 3 is coming, and those who maintain their sanity now will be the guides for those who wake up later. What you'll learn in this exploration has the power to completely transform how you see reality. It will explain why intelligent people are acting unintelligently, why educated people are embracing obvious falsehoods, and why the very concept of truth itself has become controversial. But I need to warn you. Once you understand the mechanism behind this mass hypnosis, you can never go back to comfortable ignorance. Once you see the invisible prison that most minds have entered willingly, you'll understand why freedom feels so lonely and why it's more precious than anything else you could ever possess. If you're ready for this level of revelation, if you believe that truth matters more than comfort, and if you're prepared to help others wake up from this collective nightmare, then give this video a like, subscribe to this channel, and share it with anyone you think is ready to break free from the matrix of mass delusion. Comment below with your own observations of this psychological pandemic. Your insights might be the key that unlocks someone else's awakening. The time for comfortable lies is over. The time for uncomfortable truths has begun. And you, if you choose, can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. What comes next will challenge everything you think you know about human nature, society, and your own mind. But it will also give you something infinitely more valuable: the power to think for yourself in a world that has forgotten how. Are you ready to escape the madness? Then let's begin this journey into the heart of mass psychosis and discover the path back to sanity. Let's define another brutal truth. The problem isn't that people have suddenly become stupid. The problem is that intelligence itself has been weaponized against them. Think about it. We live in an era of unprecedented access to information, yet people are more confused than ever. We have the most educated population in history, yet critical thinking has become a rare and dangerous skill. We have technology that should liberate minds, yet it's being used to imprison them. How is this possible? The answer lies in understanding a fundamental distinction that most people have never been taught: the difference between intelligence and wisdom, between knowledge and understanding, between being informed and being aware. Intelligence, as traditionally measured, is simply the ability to process information quickly and accurately. But here's the trap. In a world flooded with deliberately distorted information, high intelligence without discernment becomes a liability. Smart people are often the easiest to manipulate because they're confident in their ability to analyze data, even when that data has been carefully crafted to lead them to predetermined conclusions. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the collective unconscious, the shared psychological patterns that influence human behavior below the level of conscious awareness. He observed that highly intelligent individuals, when disconnected from their own inner wisdom, become the most susceptible to collective delusions. Why? Because they mistake their ability to rationalize with their ability to reason. Jean-Paul Sartre took this further in his concept of bad faith, the human tendency to deceive ourselves about our own freedom and responsibility. Modern mass psychosis is bad faith on a global scale. People choose to surrender their critical thinking, then convince themselves they had no choice. They adopt beliefs that serve power structures, then convince themselves these beliefs are their own authentic thoughts. But the most insidious aspect of this psychological manipulation is how it's been systematized. Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, understood that you don't control people by telling them what to think. You control them by determining what they think about. You flood their attention with carefully curated distractions, emotional triggers, and false choices, keeping their minds so busy reacting that they never have time to truly reflect. This is why Viktor Frankl's insights from the concentration camps are so relevant today. He observed that survival wasn't determined by physical strength or even intelligence, but by maintaining inner freedom, the space between stimulus and response where choice exists. Those who surrendered this inner space became what he called the walking dead, physically alive but psychologically enslaved. Today's mass psychosis operates on the same principle. It eliminates the pause between trigger and reaction. People see a headline and immediately form an opinion. They hear a phrase and instantly know which side they're on. They encounter new information and automatically filter it through pre-installed mental frameworks. The space for genuine thought has been compressed to zero. Arthur Schopenhauer identified this pattern centuries ago in his concept of the world as will and representation. He argued that most people never see reality directly. They see only their representations of reality, shaped by their unconscious drives and social conditioning. Mass psychosis exploits this by controlling the representations while leaving people convinced they're seeing truth. But here's where it gets truly diabolical. The system doesn't just control what people think. It controls how they think about thinking itself. It creates a culture where questioning approved narratives is seen as mental illness, where independent thought is labeled as extremism, where the desire for evidence is dismissed as conspiracy theorizing. Aldous Huxley predicted this in Brave New World. Not the obvious tyranny of 1984, but the subtle enslavement of a population that learns to love its chains. He saw that the most effective form of control wouldn't be forced compliance, but engineered consent. Give people the illusion of choice while controlling all the options. This is why smart people today can simultaneously hold completely contradictory beliefs without experiencing cognitive dissonance. They've been trained to compartmentalize their thinking, to apply critical analysis to some areas while accepting others on faith. They become experts in their specialized fields while remaining children in their understanding of the larger forces shaping their world. The psychological mechanism at work is what Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance reduction. When faced with information that contradicts their existing beliefs, people don't change their beliefs. They change their perception of the information. They dismiss, rationalize, or recontextualize anything that threatens their psychological comfort zone. Mass media and social media have weaponized this tendency. They create echo chambers that feel like diverse intellectual environments while actually reinforcing the same core assumptions. They present debates between controlled opposition, giving people the illusion of having considered multiple perspectives while never actually encountering genuine alternatives. Hannah Arendt, studying the rise of totalitarian movements, identified the crucial role of isolation in mass formation. When people become disconnected from genuine community and authentic relationships, they become desperate for belonging. They'll accept any group identity, no matter how irrational, rather than face the terror of standing alone with their own thoughts. This is why mass psychosis spreads fastest in the most connected societies. Social media promises connection while delivering isolation. It offers validation while destroying self-worth. It provides information while eliminating wisdom. People become addicted to the dopamine hits of likes and shares, mistaking this artificial stimulation for genuine human connection. The result is what we see everywhere today. Intelligent people acting unintelligently, educated people embracing obvious falsehoods, and rational individuals making completely irrational decisions. They haven't lost their cognitive abilities. They've lost access to them. Their minds have been hijacked by forces they don't understand and can't recognize. But understanding this mechanism is the first step to breaking free. Because once you see how the game is played, you can stop being played by it. Once you recognize the psychological hooks being used to manipulate your thinking, you can begin to reclaim your mental sovereignty. The question is, are you ready to face how deep this manipulation goes? Are you prepared to discover that almost everything you've been taught about reality might be a carefully constructed illusion? Because what comes next will show you not just how your mind is being controlled, but why and by whom. Here's what they don't want you to realize. Mass psychosis isn't just changing how people think, it's rewiring human consciousness itself. And the consequences go far deeper than bad political decisions or social media arguments. We're witnessing the systematic dismantling of what it means to be human. Let me show you what I mean. Have you noticed that people can no longer sit in silence? Watch them. The moment they're alone with their thoughts, they immediately reach for their phones, turn on music, or find some other distraction. Why? Because silence has become terrifying. In silence, the programming stops working. In silence, their real thoughts might emerge, and their real thoughts might contradict everything they've been told to believe. This is the first unseen consequence, the death of inner life. Mass psychosis doesn't just control what people think about external events. It eliminates their capacity for genuine self-reflection. The constant stream of inputs, opinions, and reactions leaves no space for the deep contemplation that has always been the source of human wisdom and creativity. Neuroscience confirms what ancient philosophers intuited. The human brain literally changes based on how it's used. When people spend their days consuming rapidly changing information designed to trigger emotional responses, their neural pathways become optimized for reaction, not reflection. They lose the ability to engage in what Daniel Kahneman called System 2 thinking, the slow, deliberate, analytical processing that separates humans from animals. But it gets worse. The psychological stress of constantly holding contradictory beliefs while pretending they're coherent creates what researchers call cognitive load. The mind becomes so exhausted from this internal conflict that it simply shuts down higher-order thinking altogether. People retreat into what psychologists term cognitive miserliness, taking mental shortcuts and accepting whatever requires the least effort to believe. This is why you see intelligent people repeating obvious falsehoods with complete conviction. It's not that they've lost their intelligence. It's that they've unconsciously decided that thinking itself is too painful to endure. They've chosen comfort over consciousness, and their brains have adapted accordingly. The social consequences are even more devastating. Mass psychosis destroys the foundation of all human relationships: trust. When people can no longer rely on shared standards of evidence and reasoning, communication becomes impossible. Families split apart, friendships end, communities fracture, society itself begins to disintegrate. But here's the truly insidious part. This breakdown isn't accidental, it's engineered. Those who understand mass psychology know that isolated, confused, emotionally destabilized individuals are infinitely easier to control than people embedded in strong communities with shared values and critical thinking skills. The Roman strategy of divide and conquer has been perfected for the digital age. Create so many conflicting narratives that people stop believing anything is true. Generate so much outrage that neighbors turn against each other. Promote so much relativism that moral clarity becomes impossible. The result? A population too busy fighting each other to notice they're all being manipulated by the same puppet masters. And the manipulation goes deeper than most people can imagine. Modern neuroscience has revealed that human decision-making is largely unconscious. The conscious mind thinks it's making choices, but brain scans show that decisions are made milliseconds before conscious awareness kicks in. Mass psychosis exploits this by programming the unconscious mind with symbols, associations, and emotional triggers that influence behavior without the person ever realizing it. This is why traditional forms of resistance don't work. You can't reason someone out of a position they weren't reasoned into. You can't present facts to someone whose unconscious mind has been programmed to reject facts that threaten their psychological safety. You can't wake up someone who has chosen unconsciousness as their preferred state of being. The economic consequences are equally profound. An unconscious population makes terrible financial decisions. They buy products they don't need to impress people they don't like. They accumulate debt to fund lifestyles that make them miserable. They work jobs that destroy their souls to afford things that don't bring happiness. The entire economic system depends on keeping people in a state of unconscious consumption. But perhaps the most tragic consequence is the loss of human potential. History shows us that breakthrough innovations, artistic masterpieces, and moral advances come from individuals who think independently and see beyond conventional wisdom. Mass psychosis systematically eliminates these individuals, either by converting them to groupthink or by marginalizing them as outcasts. We're living through what may be the greatest waste of human potential in history. Millions of people who could be creating, discovering, and building are instead trapped in mental prisons, endlessly reacting to manufactured crises and artificial controversies. Their creative energy is being harvested and redirected toward maintaining the very system that enslaves them. The spiritual consequences may be the deepest of all. Every wisdom tradition throughout history has emphasized the importance of inner freedom, self-knowledge, and connection to something greater than the ego. Mass psychosis systematically destroys all three. It traps people in reactive patterns, eliminates self-awareness, and replaces authentic spirituality with political and ideological identification. This is why you feel that profound sadness when you look around at the world today. You're not just witnessing political dysfunction or social problems. You're witnessing the systematic diminishment of human consciousness itself. You're watching millions of people voluntarily surrender the very qualities that make them human. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't permanent. Consciousness can be reclaimed. Neural pathways can be rewired. Inner freedom can be restored. The human spirit, no matter how deeply buried, cannot be completely destroyed. The question is, how? How do you break free from a system of control so sophisticated that its victims don't even know they're enslaved? How do you reclaim your mind when the very tools of thinking have been corrupted? How do you find truth in a world built on lies? The answers exist. They've always existed. But accessing them requires something most people are no longer willing to give. Everything. It requires abandoning every comfortable illusion, questioning every cherished belief, and facing the terrifying possibility that you've been wrong about almost everything. Are you ready for that level of transformation? Because what comes next isn't just information. It's revolution. A revolution that starts in your own mind and radiates outward to transform everything you touch. Here's the truth they're terrified you'll discover. The very fact that you can recognize mass psychosis means you're already partially free from it. Your awareness is not a burden. It's a superpower. And everything they've done to make you feel isolated, crazy, and powerless was specifically designed to prevent you from realizing just how dangerous you are to their system of control. Let me tell you something that will change how you see yourself forever. You are not the problem. You are the solution. Every person throughout history who has awakened from collective delusion has felt exactly what you're feeling right now. That crushing loneliness. That sense of living among the walking dead, that desperate desire to shake people awake. But here's what they eventually realized. Their awakening wasn't just personal salvation, it was preparation for leadership. The first step in breaking free is understanding something revolutionary. Mass psychosis is not primarily an intellectual problem, it's an energetic one. People don't think their way into collective delusion, and they can't think their way out. They get trapped by emotional manipulation and unconscious programming, and they can only be freed by someone who operates from a different energetic frequency altogether. This is why facts don't work. This is why logic fails. This is why the harder you try to convince people with evidence and reasoning, the more they resist. You're speaking a language their programmed minds literally cannot hear. But there's another language. The language of presence, authenticity, and inner freedom that speaks directly to the part of them that remains awake, even when buried under layers of conditioning. Socrates understood this. He didn't defeat false beliefs with superior arguments. He exposed them by asking better questions. He recognized that truth cannot be imposed from the outside. It can only be remembered from within. His method was to create cognitive dissonance so skillfully that people began to question their own assumptions. He became a mirror that reflected back their contradictions until they could no longer avoid seeing them. But Socrates was just one man with a handful of students. Today, we have the potential to operate at a completely different scale. The same technology being used to program minds can be used to free them. The same network spreading collective delusion can spread collective awakening. The question is, do you have the courage to become a node in that network? Here's your first weapon. Radical honesty. Not just honesty about external events, but ruthless honesty about your own internal experience. Most people are trapped in mass psychosis because they're afraid to admit what they really see, feel, and know. They pretend to believe things they doubt, support things they question, and agree with things that make them uncomfortable, all because they fear the consequences of standing alone with their truth. But what if you stopped pretending? What if you spoke your authentic observations without trying to convince anyone? What if you simply became a living example of what it looks like to think for yourself? The effect would be more powerful than you can imagine because authenticity is contagious in ways that arguments never are. Your second weapon, Strategic silence. The system of mass control depends on constant reaction. It feeds on your outrage, your fear, your desperate attempts to wake people up through debate and confrontation. But what if you refused to play? What if you stopped reacting to every provocation and started responding from a place of inner calm? This isn't passive withdrawal. It's active resistance. When you stop feeding the machine with your emotional energy, you begin to starve it. When you stop participating in manufactured controversies, you start to see them clearly for what they are. When you stop defending your position and start embodying your truth, you become unshakable. Marcus Aurelius, writing from the center of the Roman Empire, understood this principle. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Mass psychosis can only control you if you give it access to your inner state. The moment you reclaim sovereignty over your own mind, you become free, regardless of what's happening around you. But here's the counterintuitive part. The more free you become, the more others will try to pull you back into their mental prison. They will mock your questions, attack your character, and accuse you of the very things they're guilty of. This isn't personal. It's predictable. Jung called it projection. People see in others what they can't face in themselves. Your third weapon, compassionate detachment. You must learn to care deeply about people while remaining unattached to their choices. You cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and trying to do so will only drain your energy and reinforce their resistance. But you can model a different way of being. You can demonstrate that it's possible to be happy, peaceful, and fulfilled without participating in collective madness. This is perhaps the most difficult lesson for awakening minds to learn. Your natural impulse is to grab people by the shoulders and shake them until they see what you see. But forced awakening is no awakening at all. It's just another form of control. True liberation can only be chosen, never imposed. Gandhi understood this when he said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." He didn't try to convince the British Empire to leave India through arguments and debates. He simply stopped participating in his own enslavement and inspired others to do the same through his example. Your fourth weapon, community building. Not echo chambers of people who already agree with you, but authentic relationships with others who value truth over comfort. These don't have to be large groups. Even one genuine connection with another free-thinking individual can provide the support you need to maintain your sanity in an insane world. History shows us that every major shift in human consciousness began with small groups of awakened individuals who found each other and supported each other's growth. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, every spiritual awakening. They all started with communities of people who dared to think differently and had the courage to support each other in that thinking. But here's the crucial point. These communities must be built around shared commitment to truth, not shared beliefs about truth. The moment any group becomes rigid in its thinking, it becomes just another form of mass psychosis. The antidote to collective delusion is not collective certainty. It's collective inquiry. Your fifth and most powerful weapon, inner work. All external change begins with internal transformation. You cannot free others from psychological slavery while you remain enslaved to your own unconscious patterns, emotional reactions, and mental conditioning. The depth of your inner freedom determines the power of your influence. This means meditation, self-reflection, studying your own mind with the same intensity that scientists study external phenomena. It means facing your own shadows, healing your own wounds, and developing the kind of inner stability that cannot be shaken by external chaos. Most people avoid this work because it's difficult and uncomfortable. They prefer to focus on changing the world rather than changing themselves. But this is exactly backwards. The world is a reflection of collective consciousness. Change consciousness, and you change the world. Try to change the world without changing consciousness, and you just create new forms of the same old problems. Here's what most people don't realize. The moment you begin this inner work seriously, you start radiating a different frequency. People feel it, even if they can't name it. Some are attracted to it, others are threatened by it, but no one remains unaffected by it. You become a walking example of human potential, a living reminder of what's possible when someone reclaims their mental sovereignty. This is the true rebellion, not fighting the system, but transcending it. Not trying to wake up the masses, but waking up so completely yourself that you become a beacon for others who are ready to wake up. But this is only the beginning, because once you taste real freedom, mental, emotional, and spiritual freedom, you realize that everything you thought you knew about reality was just the opening act. The final revelation is coming, and it will transform not just how you see the world, but how you see yourself and your role in the greatest transformation in human history. Here it is, the truth that changes everything, the realization that will either liberate you completely or terrify you beyond measure. Are you ready? Mass psychosis isn't humanity's greatest tragedy. It's humanity's greatest opportunity. Let that sink in. Every person trapped in collective delusion, every mind enslaved by programming, every soul lost in the maze of manufactured confusion, they're not the problem. They're the raw material for the most extraordinary evolutionary leap our species has ever taken. You see, what you've been witnessing isn't just the breakdown of civilization. It's the breakdown of an old form of human consciousness that has reached the end of its usefulness. The mass psychosis spreading across the planet isn't a random pathology. It's the death throes of a dying paradigm. And from that death, something unprecedented is being born. Think about it this way. Every caterpillar must completely dissolve before it can become a butterfly. The caterpillar doesn't gradually grow wings. Its entire structure breaks down into undifferentiated soup. And from that primordial chaos, an entirely new form of life emerges. What looks like death is actually metamorphosis. Humanity is in its soup stage right now. The old structures of thought, belief, and social organization are dissolving. People who seemed rational and stable are losing their minds because their minds were built on foundations that are no longer solid. The chaos you're witnessing isn't random. It's purposeful. It's preparing the ground for something extraordinary. But here's the crucial point. Not everyone gets to become a butterfly. Some remain trapped in the dissolution phase, endlessly cycling through confusion and reaction. Others, a precious few, recognize what's happening and consciously participate in their own transformation. These are the ones who will seed the new paradigm. This is why you feel so different from everyone around you. This is why their concerns seem trivial and their obsessions feel foreign. You're not losing your mind, you're finding it. You're not becoming alienated from humanity. You're becoming the next stage of human evolution. The ancient Greeks had a concept called the philosopher king, the idea that society would only be just when it was ruled by those who had transcended the ordinary levels of human consciousness. Plato understood that most people live in what he called the cave of shadows, mistaking projections on the wall for reality itself. Only a few escape the cave and see the sun of truth directly. Those few have a choice. They can return to the cave and try to convince the prisoners that they're seeing shadows, or they can begin building a new world outside the cave altogether. Guess which approach has a higher probability of success? This is the ultimate realization. You are not here to save the sleepers. You are here to awaken the awakening. Your role is not to convince the unconscious masses to wake up. It's to find the others who are already stirring and help them complete their transformation. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying this process. He called it individuation, the journey from unconscious conformity to conscious authenticity. But Jung also recognized that individuation isn't just a personal process, it's an evolutionary one. Each person who completes the journey makes it easier for others to follow. Each awakened consciousness adds to what Rupert Sheldrake called the morphogenetic field, the invisible template that guides the development of consciousness itself. You are participating in the most important project in human history, the conscious evolution of consciousness itself. Every moment you choose awareness over reaction, truth over comfort, inner freedom over external validation, you're not just transforming yourself, you're upgrading the entire species. But this process isn't comfortable or convenient. It requires you to let go of everything you thought you knew about who you are and what life is about. It demands that you face the terrifying possibility that you are far more powerful and far more responsible than you ever imagined. Because here's the final truth. The mass psychosis isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Every lie you see through makes you stronger. Every manipulation you recognize makes you wiser. Every moment of isolation in a world gone mad is actually preparation for leadership in a world being reborn. The people trapped in collective delusion aren't your enemies. They're your sleeping family members. And just as you wouldn't abandon your family members if they fell into a coma, you don't abandon humanity because they've fallen into unconsciousness. But you also don't crawl into the coma with them. You become so fully awake, so radiantly alive, so magnificently free that your very presence reminds them of what they really are underneath all the programming. This is why the forces of control work so hard to make you doubt yourself. They know that even one fully awakened human being is a threat to their entire system. They know that consciousness is contagious, that freedom is infectious, that truth spreads like wildfire once it finds dry kindling. You are that kindling. Your awakening isn't just personal salvation, it's planetary service. Every step you take toward inner freedom creates a pathway for others to follow. Every boundary you establish with collective madness makes it easier for others to establish their own boundaries. Every moment you choose sanity in an insane world, you're voting for the kind of future you want to inhabit. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage." The mass psychosis that seems so terrifying and overwhelming is actually a dragon princess waiting for you to recognize your own power. What if everything you've been taught about being human is wrong? What if you're not a random accident in a meaningless universe, but a conscious participant in the universe's own awakening? What if your struggles with mass delusion aren't signs of your weakness, but evidence of your strength? What if your inability to fit into an insane world is proof of your sanity? The time of hiding is over. The time of pretending to be smaller than you are is finished. The time of apologizing for seeing clearly in a blind world has ended. You were born for this moment. You were prepared for this challenge. You carry within you everything necessary, not just to survive the collapse of the old paradigm, but to midwife the birth of the new one. Stop waiting for someone else to save the world. Stop hoping that the masses will wake up and do the work for you. Stop looking for external validation that you're on the right path. You are the one you've been waiting for. You are the change you want to see. You are the light in the darkness, the sanity in the madness, the hope in the despair. The caterpillar is dissolving. The butterfly is ready to emerge. The only question left is, will you spread your wings, or will you stay hidden in the cocoon? The choice is yours. The time is now. The future of human consciousness hangs in the balance. What will you choose?